Well, welcome to a new Harry's Farm video, and it's been a while since I've done the last one, but there's lots going on the farm, including the sheep, which are back on the farm. So I'll be mentioning those. I'll be looking around some of the arable things that we've been doing, some of the schemes, touching on inheritance tax, and that issue just continues to rumble on, and why I think farming is basically broken in the UK at the moment, but I'll go into that in more detail in a moment. Yeah, if you're wondering what's happening behind me, yeah, the sheep are back on the farm. They're grazing round. There's about 320 head here. They're Oxford breed of sheep, which are famous for having triples. So they'll be going in for lambing. David New is the owner of the sheep. He's down there. He rents the grassland off me, and they'll be going back to his place for lambing and things. And it's just great to have them back on. They're just grazing off the grass that we've left. They're about to be moved to a field up by the house, so a very exciting time if you're a sheep, because they've been in here a few days and it's quite tight. You can see I've grazed it down, and then they go off there. Something just on the sheep, we're very close to the farmer's dog. So Jeremy Clarkson has the pub up the road, and he has a farm shop there, and he obviously has the Diddley Squat farm shop. And that is all about local produce. We're 1.6 miles away, I measured this field, so particularly close. And we're in discussions, and it looks over the coming months, you'll be able to buy produce from this farm at Diddley Squat or at Farmer's Dog, and on both sheep and beef, which is good news. Now, let's turn to the arable and see what's going on there. Actually divided into two, and it's in the countryside stewardship scheme, and we've planted this off to grass this corner, enhance. It's got wildflowers in it as well, but this is not a productive part of the farm, and so that's why we've taken it out of production. And I'm very pleased. If you can see, the grass is really coming quite well. We'll see more once the spring and the soil temperature goes up, but there's quite a lot of grass there. And you'll also notice some sheep poo here, because I was driving down the road the other day, and I thought, oh, I wonder how the sheep are getting on. You can sort of see them from the top road up there, and I think, hang on a minute, they're not meant to be in there, and they were right across here, which is what sheep do. But actually it won't do any harm. It'll just help tiller them out a bit. It does a little bit more harm on the wheat, but really at this time of year they weren't in here very long, and they were very easy to get out. But yeah, quite pleased with how the grass is establishing. We spun it on in September time, something like that, and it's good to see it establishing well. I'm sure we'll have some patches to do come the spring, but generally all good. And now you can just see where the grass area comes to an end and the wheat starts, which is here. So it's an arbitrary line. I did it in line as a fence line on the other side there, and just did a straight line. And now we're in the wheat, and this is going pretty well actually. You can see the rows here. It's been an interesting winter. Yes, it's been wet, but we've had some really cold spells as well. We've had snow, but low temperatures. I think we've got down to -6, -7 degrees. And weirdly, with winter wheat, that's quite good, because it basically kills the bugs and slugs disappear, and it just hardens up the wheat. It actually needs frosts on it, winter wheat, form the head, and then the tillers come up and they will have a wheat head on it. It's a peculiar thing, winter wheat, but the cold is a non-issue. It's not like a Canadian winter, a British winter, and that's why we grow winter wheat, and they're always good. So yeah, I like to see rows like that at this time of year. What I'll look for, just to see if there's any weeds I can see, but we put a general herbicide on it. All looks pretty good. You can see, yeah, that is sheep. So they've had a nibble in here, because they were across here. But as I say, not too bad. But you have to remember, this year, looking at the acreage we're growing, I'm only actually producing or growing crops like this wheat on a third of the area I was farming in 2021. A dramatic change. And that's because I've entered all these new schemes, countryside stewardship and SFI, Sustainable Farming Initiative, and it's a completely different way of farming, and it's not been as straightforward as I hoped. We're in another field now. This looks just as good. Really pleased to how this is all established down here. But yeah, why are we making this big change to these environmental schemes that are now on offer? And it's just to do with the profitability of actually growing crops. Now, my first job when I left Agricultural College, Shuttleworth, was as a grain buyer. And I was with a company called Greyneck, and I've discovered this little booklet that I had. And this one is all about, back in the 80s, there was something called intervention. And there were these, there was a guaranteed price from the EU, a minimum price for wheat, barley and milling wheats and oilseed rape. And back then, when I was a grain buyer, it was actually a very attractive offer, intervention, to sell into intervention, particularly with barley. The standards were quite low. Feed wheat was 68 kilos bushel weight, which is low. UK standard is 72 now, so 68 was very low. And barley was 63, which is about the same as now. And 15% moisture, we really wanted it below 14.5% moisture. And a lot of what was grown in the UK used to go into intervention. It was a base point. And it was when food production was what farming was all about. And you could say that we overdid it, but the price paid in December 1984 was £119 for feed wheat and feed barley. Now I put that into a calculator, inflation calculator of Bank of England, just to see how much that equates to today. And if I do that, my £119 comes out at £380 a tonne. For feed wheat and feed barley, that's actually the price we should be receiving today if it just kept up with inflation from 1984. It is nowhere near that. If I look at the prices, you've got barley at £152 for January 25 and feed wheat £178. And that is what's gone wrong in farming. All the while, where we had these area payments, we hadn't noticed how the wheat price we get for selling grain post-harvest just is kept static, and it's a world price, and it does not make sense, because we've had dramatic inflation on fertilizer prices and on the agri-chemicals we use to control weeds and fungicides and that sort of thing. I looked, when I was a grain buyer, we did a little bit of fertilizer, and in the 80s, 80 to 100 pounds. It was always farmers trying to buy under 100 pounds a tonne. I looked at the fertiliser price this morning and it's 342 pounds a tonne. So 3.5 times more than it was in 1984. And I look at agri-chemicals and they're about the same. They've gone up 40% since lockdown. Dramatic rise in the chemical cost, but the grain price has not kept up anywhere near with that inflation. And I think peak yields, I was doing 10, 11 tonnes in the 90s. That was probably my most profitable time in farming. And since then, and particularly now, it's got incredibly tight. The simple thing of trying to grow a crop with all increased labour costs, massive machinery costs, dramatic rise in chemical costs, fertiliser costs, and the wheat price not nearly keeping pace with that. And what is it? Is it a supermarket? What are the reasons behind it? But that is why I say now UK farming is broken. It just cannot grow food profitably with the cost structure as it is. And I think this has been exposed by the inheritance tax legislation that came into the budget. This change in inheritance tax, actually, the issue is not the inheritance tax, it's the fact that farming is no longer profitable. It's making a ridiculously small return on capital because of land prices doing what they were. I'll come to that in a moment. But fundamentally, it's not profitable. Now, the big thing that's happening in the last sort of 8 months, year, is livestock farming has quietly in the background got more profitable. There is a change in the way we perceive milk, butter, beef, just meat products as being the healthy option. It's unprocessed, huge nutrient base, and the new generation are taking to going back to whole milk, butter, rather than margarine. It's a very interesting trend, and it's quite a big change. So quietly in the background, a mixed farm, if it's got livestock like the sheep we've got here, that is actually a better way of farming. From my point of view, I can't really do it because it's massively labour intensive, and I've got another job to do. If you follow YouTube, I do something else, and I just haven't got the time, and I can't employ someone to do, and that's why I rent the ground out to David New, who manages it all. It's Oil Soil Association, the land up here, so it's all organic production, and he manages all that. But it's interesting that actually working out very well. So yeah, that's background of why I've gone into the environmental schemes. But even that isn't straightforward. Now, the biggest of the environmental schemes I've done is actually a countryside stewardship agreement. And I first entered a countryside stewardship agreement on the farm 2004, some time ago. And that is why we have a 4 to 6 metre margin all around the field. We treat the grassland up here in a different way because it's permanent grassland, it's low input, and I farm it in a certain way. We have to cut hay at certain times, not graze it at other times, that sort of thing. That's all been going on since 2004. But in January 2024, I enter this new agreement, and that is all the enhanced stubble we've got up here, which is basically over not actually growing a crop for 1 year and then going back into wheat, and the wild bird areas, the grass areas we just looked at and things. And that is now a major part of the farm turnover. And up for 19 years, the payment has dropped for countryside stewardship first week of December, first or second week of December. Didn't happen this year. And it's left a big hole in the farm accounts. You think, well, hang on a minute, I've signed up to this thing, you've always paid out this time, and now this year you don't. And it's so frustrating, because there was things I wanted to do. I've now got to explain to the bank manager, well, there's a big black hole in my bank account, not quite as big as Rachel Reeves is always on about with her 22 billion, but there's a big hole, and I've got suppliers to pay as every other farms, and I'm not alone in this. This is something that, hang on a minute, what's going on? I haven't received my payment that I used to get at this time of year. And it's so frustrating. We're putting in hedges. I mentioned my last report up here. I was putting a new hedge along here because you can see these trees, they're getting past their best, and we're going to put some trees in here. There is a cost to doing that, and it is a time thing when you do it. And you tend to do it November, December, January, but there's a cost. And I've got a big black hole in my bank account because the countryside stewardship payment hasn't come in. There's other investments I was going to do. I was going to clear the woods or get people in to do that. That's all stopped. So everything on the farm is stopped. And I've been trying to get an answer why they haven't paid it. And initially, I had an email back which was just useless. It was asking if I wanted support, financial support, about mental health and that sort of. Just no, I just want an answer. When you're going to pay it? They have up to the 30th of June to pay it, they tell me. Oh, I don't want to wait that long. I have to sort out the account. I have to continue farming. And I said, no, this is more serious than that. I want to talk to someone. You cannot talk to someone, but you can lodge a complaint. And I did get a phone call back from the payment authority, and they explained basically they've had a dramatic fall in head count, and it's just workload. We've all entered these schemes, there's less people to process them, and they just can't get through them. But anyway, it looks as though it will come through, but I just have to wait. But it is so frustrating. When you want to get on with these things, it's like the government doesn't understand that we work in seasons, and there's a time to plant this hedge, and it's now, but I haven't got the money. Now, a few of you in the background are saying, well, you've got other business, just lend some money to the farm. But if it's a separate business, and it's interesting, Steve Reed mentioned this, we've got to diversify. If you've got a separate business and you want to put money from that business into the other business, you have to do it, well, from dividends or something. And to put 10,000 in the farm account, I would have to earn 21,000 profit on the other business to end up with 10,000 I could put in the farm. So it's, you can do it, but the farm should be able to stand up on its own. And that is not what is happening at the moment. There's other schemes. I've got SFI gone in as well, which I've done a min-till agreement on that one, and looking after stone walls and actually traditional buildings. So I have entered these schemes in good faith, and it's interesting because the schemes were actually dreamt up by the Conservatives, and they're now being implemented and by the Labour government, and that's all good. But it's such an odd period where I am more concentrated on these environmental schemes than I am actually in growing crops, growing food. And actually Jeremy the other day called because he had an out of the blue call from Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, who just wanted a round table. She was going around the country just seeing farmers just to get some background what was going on. I went along. There's nothing political about this, but I thought it was a good opportunity to find out where they were thinking, just find out a little bit how government works. And it was very interesting. The topic came up, obviously, the inheritance tax and the issues with farmers on that, how this was implemented out of the blue. What happened? And what Kemi was saying was very interesting, that basically how government works at budget time, the Treasury and civil servants basically parade all the things you might be able to do as a government for the budget, and what if you want to bring in income, there's a row of things. And this had always been on the table for years. It's just one of the things they mention. And they hadn't implemented it because they wanted to do more research on it. And so they must have just laid this thing out, then go and decide what they're going to do in this budget. We need to raise money. Oh, that's a good one. So it was eye-opening that there wasn't a huge amount of research of the impact of it. And that, I think, is the main issue here, that it came from nowhere. I feel so sorry for people caught up in it, particularly the older farmers who haven't done anything about succession because they never had to. And I think that's the criminal bit, that it's been implemented so fast on an industry that was not prepared for it, and it's huge mental stress, and it's just another thing that has really hit farming. And, you know, as I say, I think it's shown that it's exposed the unprofitability of farming. That's the thing we need to fix, I think, in this country. Is it the supermarkets? Why is it? The trouble with the wheat price that I'm particularly interested in, all the commodity prices, they are world prices, and we're on a world market. This is marginal land, and that is not the best place to grow wheat. But if we want to be self-sufficient in food, we've got to have a real think about it, because at the moment, well, last harvest was lowest in 40 years. It's going to get way worse. There's so many people entering schemes as I've done. I'm not sure what tonnage we're going to be growing in 3 or 4 years' time. And I can't see it's right that if I actually look at, as an outsider, look at what this farm is receiving, peak sort of subsidy, when I was getting area payments and doing a stewardship, was about 2018, 2019. Then they were taking all the payments away, but they've introduced all these environmental schemes. I will now get double the amount of money from the government in next year, if they do pay on time, than I was receiving then. So the government are paying more money out to farmers, and the amount of food we produce in this country is dramatically falling. That is, to me, is not a good combination. I cannot see it lasting, but let's see what happens. That is what's happening right now. So there you go, bit of a debrief into the business of farming in 2025 here in the UK. Lots more to say as time goes on. Spring will be arriving, and hopefully Countryside Stewardship will arrive as well. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming on very soon.